So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to another acronym, INPDR. You probably have INPDA, you have ANPCD, you have NNPDF, there's lots of them. So the INPDR is the International Niemann-Pick Disease Registrar. So the INPDR has been very busy over the last year with the expansion of the clinical registry to new countries, including here in Australia, Brazil, USA and new European countries. In addition to this, Conan and Jackie will be telling us about the newly developed INPDR patient-reported database. This is a pilot program that is open across English languages countries, including Australia, New Zealand, USA, Canada, England and Ireland, and provides an opportunity for families to tell their stories in a way that can contribute to meaningful and impactful research. We are also pleased to say that the International Registry will be collaborating closely with community leaders at a local level in the form of an ambassador program to encourage participation in the register. So we've got a pre-recorded here from Jackie Imray and Conan, who is the CEO of INPDR.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much to Mandy and her colleagues at Niemann-Pick Disease Foundation of Australia for having us here speaking today. We're delighted to provide to you a range of perspectives on the registry. We know that many of you won't be aware of the registry, so we've got some really good insights into why the registry is important from Jim Green, our chairman, and the founding member of Niemann-Pick UK and the INPDA. We've also Jackie Imray speaking about the progress in the registry and the global development plan and how that's progressing internationally. I'm going to take you through some really interesting changes we're making to the patient-reported database and how that's developing and how you can take part in that very soon. And we're also going to talk about how the registry is used and the research that's produced. And I'm going to present some work from Sean Bolton and from Jackson Putney, who's a new PhD student using the patient-reported database in the registry to develop patient-reported outcome in Niemann-Pick disease and why that's very important going forward. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the presentations, and I'll be around for Q&A afterwards.
When it first began, the idea came from a group of professionals in 2012 when the question was put to them, what could the INPDA, the patients do to enhance the development and the speed at which progress is made. And there was a unanimous answer, and that was a patient registry, because at the moment there was a shortage of information about the diseases, and as it is with all rare diseases, the problem in trying to understand them is that you don't have a lot of patients in one place. That even the top experts in the field, the top clinicians in the field, have a relatively small number, and so trying to understand the progression of the disease, the way the disease will develop in individuals is extremely difficult, and this is a very variable disease in the way it progresses. Well, both diseases are. So, it was a clear message, and that's where this all started, from the INPDA meeting in Spain in 2012. And, it has been a long time in developing. That's because it's a challenge to make an international registry that's available to everybody, and the concept was pretty innovative and pretty unique. The idea that a patient body would initiate the process of setting up a registry, but working with all the professionals, both scientific and clinical, in the development of the registry. So that basic philosophy, that basic policy of the whole community coming together to develop it, because the whole community would benefit from it. And you know, it's not instantly understood or recognized the difference that this can make and the benefits that are there for every group that have participated in the development. Primarily, you know, patients and their families want to try and understand this disease more. They want to know how it's going to progress in them, in their child, and they want to do everything they can to speed up the development of therapies. So there's a huge benefit in being able to collect data across an international base that could then give us the sort of numbers that would begin to look at, you know, how this disease might develop in my child, and obviously for the things like recruitment into trials, understanding the effects of trials. All these things are major potential benefits for families. For clinicians too, a clinician wants to be able to give answers to patients. And if they can tap into a database that has not only information about other patients around the world, clinical data, but also clinical guidelines, which many people don't know, but are present in the registry. And in fact, there's a new set being developed at the moment for ASMD. So, you know, that's a really big resource for clinicians around the world. The scientists, I mean, it's fairly obvious what the use for them would be, because it makes a huge difference to them if they can draw on data that might give them guidance or pointers as to the way to go. And finally, to the link between the pharmaceutical companies and the patients. Having an international registry is a huge benefit when it comes to beginning to understand or find patients that might fit in a trial through the set of criteria. It's also a huge benefit in that if a pharmaceutical company is going to develop a therapy, they know a registry is there, and therefore that can be developed and used in order to help in the approval process of therapies as well. And that would save them having to create registries. So for them too, and perhaps the most significant thing here that everybody needs to appreciate is that having an international registry for a rare disease means that researchers and pharmaceutical companies are even more likely to look at Niemann-Pick disease because there's a united community there. So you know, collectively, there's something in this for everybody, but ultimately, you know, we need the data to make it work. So it has been a long time in building it because it's a partnership approach, and there have been practical reasons to the development of that process. But I'm delighted to say we've got a very professional team now that are working in and on the registry, highly qualified individuals, as well as a whole scientific advisory board, international patient organizations from around the world. This is a big cooperative effort that will make a big cooperative difference. The strapline for this registry is by the community, for the community, and we need everybody to now see the benefits of it and to encourage the input of data. You know, I think we already have I think it's more than 400 patients in the registry, but the potential is for many, many more, and certainly thousands are a possibility when we go fully international. Now that becomes powerful. And, you know, it'll be because of the families and because of their clinicians and because of the researchers and with the support of, you know, industry as well, we can make this work for the diseases.
Hello everyone. For those that don't know me, my name's Jackie Imrie. I've been working with Niemann-Pick diseases for about 30 years, initially as clinical nurse specialist and latterly on the International Niemann-Pick Registry. I've met a lot of you and I've even had the honour of attending one of your meetings. Sad that we can't be there this year. I'm going to tell you where we are with the registry and how patients can get involved. This is the electronic data capture system where we collect clinical data when you go to see your doctor or your loved one goes to see your doctor. Consent is in clinic, as with a lot of projects, or can be postal as well. And then the data is collected on your child or yourself, whether it's NPC or ASMD. The patient-reported data side is very much you choosing for your child to go into this registry. Very much quality of care, and Conan will tell you more about that later. But again, we collect separate data for NPC and ASMD. This is the current status of the clinically reported data set with over 360 patients. We have 7 sites in the UK, 3 in the USA, and then individual sites in Spain, Italy, Germany, the Czech Republic, Ireland, and Brazil. The patient-reported data set has almost 100 patients in, with 45 from the USA, 7 from Australia, and 5 from Canada, but 1 or 2 patients in from very diverse countries, including Ukraine, China, and South Africa, for example. But in all, we have 19 countries represented from 5 continents, which shows that the patients themselves really do want to be in this registry. Onboarding new sites is a project that we created this graph for many years ago, and we've been working on it for the last 2 years. Phase 1, we are either active in every site or very, very close to approval. Phase 2, a lot of these countries we've been waiting for the translations to be done, but most of them have either been very close to approval, already submitted, or we've got active discussions ongoing. In many of the phase 3 sites, as you can see, we already have had 2 sites submitting in their own language, but we have contact with many others. And even in phase 4, the hardest to reach countries, whether that be because of local regulations being difficult or languages, discussions have started. This shows where we go from the preliminary section, where we have 27 sites now at this stage, having had the introductory presentation and documents having been sent out to start the process. We go through the initiation of governance and the approvals, and then once we've trained up at the end, we give access and patients can be recruited. The content of the registry is the clinical reported data side, where we collect retrospective and prospective data, the demographics, where the patients live and all about them, their medical history and treatments they may be on. We collect adverse events and drug reactions so that it can be used for post-marketing surveillance. And it doesn't mean you need to see a doctor more often than usual. It's in standard care visits. Patient-reported data set I won't go into in great detail because it has been reviewed now. It's ready to roll out, and Conan will be telling you about that. The INPDR content, there's a lot on this slide, but basically we collect as much as we can about the disease profile, the diagnostics, the genetics, and what biomarkers we use, including family history, healthcare, any other investigations or modifying therapies or adverse events and symptomatic treatments, and any procedures that may have taken place. We collect the clinical profile, so we know as much about the patients as we possibly can, especially if they have other systems affected, neurological system or pulmonary and cardiovascular systems. And the outcomes we're looking at are the mortality, the quality of life, and the carer quality of life, which is very. This is where we are currently with Australia. The clinical reported data set is just waiting for approval with Mark's team in Melbourne. Once that's approved, it'll roll out to other centres. And it's very important that you get involved with the PRD, which Conan's going to tell you more about. He's also going to tell you a bit more about our ambassador programme that's running currently. It's been great to not meet you, but hear from you hopefully in the near future. And sorry we can't be there again. I'll now hand over to Conan.
Okay, so thank you. Now we're going to talk a little bit about our patient-reported database. Now, this patient-reported database is very exciting because it gives a great opportunity for patients to tell their story and report their experience. It's been around for a while, but we've made a lot of changes to it so that the data that we're collecting is going to be more impactful in terms of clinical decision making and research. So we're including a general quality of life scale, which is widely used by economists and health economists to make decisions around healthcare and drug reimbursement. We're including the NPC specific quality of life scale, which needs to be developed further so we can better understand the impact of this disease at the patient level and the family level. And then carer quality of life, how this impacts on the carers and the families. And then the wider impact in terms of needs and unmet needs that doesn't just focus on the disease symptoms, but it looks at the social impact, the economic impact, the educational impact, and other impacts such as financial that will affect the day-to-day lives of patients and their families, and how therapies can change that or otherwise. We're looking at collecting more robust data on disease symptoms and severity reported by the patient themselves and how that can change and how that relates to the clinical reported data. This will all be self-enrolled. The patients can take part in this themselves. It's fully ethically approved, and it's tailored to the people participating in it. So it's tailored to the patient, the carer, the parent, and whether they've ASMD or NPC. The data collection isn't just a one-off, it's 6 monthly, so it's updated. And together, by linkage to the clinical data, it creates a very powerful and rich picture of what it's like to have Niemann-Pick disease and how their experience changes with different clinical care, different therapies, etc. We'll be rolling this out very shortly, and we'll be promoting it through a network of ambassadors, including Mandy here, and we're very, very grateful for her support and the support of the Niemann-Pick Foundation in Australia to support this work going forward. We'll be also rolling it out in Canada, in the United States, in Ireland, in the UK, and in New Zealand. So we're very, very keen to see this work well, and once we approve it works in the English language, we'll be expanding it into other languages as well. So now I want to talk a little bit about research. The most important thing a registry must do is facilitate research and promote high quality research. Very recently, we've published our first paper on the baseline characteristics of NPC patients, and we have a video from Sean who's going to present a little bit of the findings on that work. We're about to publish a methods manuscript. We've started a collaboration with Public Health England to investigate the epidemiology and health service utilisation of Niemann-Pick disease. And of course, we've started our study with our PhD student, Jackson Putney, and Jackson will be presenting some of this work as well on the impact of Niemann-Pick disease on patient quality of life. We've just approved access to data for a study into seizure incidence and how we manage that in Niemann-Pick disease to a group of researchers in Manchester, England. And we're strengthening data access models. We've started a collaboration with CPATH, the US data integration organisation that's very closely linked to the FDA, and we're planning to support one research study led by Liz Berry-Kravitz in terms of the impact of Adrabetadex on patient outcomes with an NPC. And the potential here is to do more studies like this going forward and to improve the quality of research overall. So now we're going to move on to present some of the two studies. Sean's study on the baseline characteristics of NPC and Jackson's work on his PhD. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is another quick video to outline one of the studies I aim to run as part of my PhD. So the study will focus on validating a quality of life questionnaire specific to both adult and child patients with Niemann-Pick disease type C. So in 2019, the Niemann-Pick disease type C quality of life questionnaire was developed by Lydia Aston, Dr. Rachel Shaw and Dr. Rebecca Knibb at Aston University. However, this questionnaire has not yet been fully validated. This is due to the fact that to validate these questionnaires, we need large sample sizes from the target population, which just weren't possible at the time. And we need these large sample sizes in order to run the tests required to validate these questionnaires. This presents a bit of a problem because if we don't know whether a questionnaire is valid, we don't know whether it can accurately measure quality of life in patients with Niemann-Pick disease type C. Although with the establishment of the patient-reported database within the International Niemann-Pick Disease Registry, we may now have a solution to this problem. So we have applied to the International Niemann-Pick Disease Registry in order to access patient-reported data on questionnaires. And one of these questionnaires will be the Niemann-Pick Quality of Life questionnaire. So the ideal endpoint for this study will be to have a valid quality of life questionnaire for both adult and child patients with NPC. And this will provide patients with NPC with a voice in expressing how the condition impacts on their lives. We can also use these quality of life questionnaires as endpoints in clinical trials, so they can provide further evidence as to the effectiveness of potential new treatments for Niemann-Pick disease type C. Now, this project will run across the whole 3 years of my PhD. And once we have validated the quality of life questionnaires, we are then in a position to pursue other objectives. Now, I've made a research poster which outlines the wider project in a bit more detail, and I hope to release this to the community very soon. So in terms of progress I've made so far with the project, as I said before, I've applied to the International Niemann-Pick Disease Registry in order to access patient-reported data. So currently I'm awaiting a decision on whether my application has been successful. But hopefully in a few weeks we'll get a look at some of this patient-reported data, and I'll keep you updated as the project progresses. So thank you very much for watching.
Hello, my name is Sean Bolton and I'm an operations consultant working with the International Niemann-Pick Disease Registry, also known as the INPDR. I'm excited to share with you all today a recent publication from the INPDR using data collected from patients diagnosed with Niemann-Pick disease type C. But first, I'd like to explain a little bit about the INPDR. The INPDR is an initiative which has developed a registry to collect important data about the Niemann-Pick diseases, covering acid sphingomyelinase deficiency, also known as Niemann-Pick disease type A and B, and also Niemann-Pick disease type C. By collecting clinical and patient-reported data, the INPDR aims to discover new knowledge about NPDs, which may lead to improved treatment and care opportunities for patients across the world. With this in mind, the INPDR undertook a piece of research using data it had collected on NPC patients between 2014 and 2019. Data was collected from 203 patients from 11 specialist centres across 6 countries. Using the data, we looked at the clinical characteristics of NPC, including the demographics, diagnosis details, neurological and visceral symptoms, genetics, and treatments given to NPC patients. We looked at the diagnosis of patients and the type of form NPC patients were diagnosed with, which is linked to the age key symptoms appear in patients. The mean or average age at diagnosis was 11.2 years. Most of the patients were diagnosed using genetic testing, and we found that there were some mutations that were more common than others. Of the forms of NPC we identified, 43 patients had early infantile onset NPC, 47 had late infantile onset NPC, 41 patients had juvenile onset, and 37 patients had the adult onset NPC. Enlarged spleens were commonly reported in patients, with 73% of records highlighting splenomegaly. Enlarged livers and also jaundice in newborn, also known as neonatal jaundice, were found in 40% of patient records. Interestingly, we found that rates of enlarged spleens in livers and neonatal jaundice decreased when neurological symptoms appeared at an older age. When we looked at the neurological aspects of NPC, we found that cognitive impairment, dysarthria or trouble speaking, difficulties in walking, and vertical supranuclear gaze palsy, or difficulties looking up and down with the eyes, were quite common. In regards to treatments, the data indicates that patients are prescribed on average 2 medications, with the most common being miglustat and antiepileptics. So this publication demonstrates the benefits that a patient-led registry can offer to the Niemann-Pick disease community. By having a well-designed and functional registry, the INPDR can start to overcome the issues that rare disease communities have traditionally faced, which usually is a poor understanding of the natural history of the disease due to the disbursement of patients across the world and the small numbers of patients. Being able to pool and collect data together from patients across the globe offers researchers improved and stronger data, which in turn can lead to new insights, which may result in improvements for patients and their families. Thank you for listening.